Well, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. It's Hal Sparks Mornings, Megaworldwide, Thanksgiving Eve, and welcome to the greatest live stream in the history of live streams. I'm in Los Angeles in a garage doing the show this morning, so I hope you appreciate my long-flowing post-rock night locks and the starkness of the lighting, because I'm basically performing for a flashlight today. Welcome, hello, and if I may, hi chat room. Poof, there you are. Welcome. Glad you guys are here. I need to open up a, let's see, a chat window for this thing so that I can actually see this for myself in a way that I can actually see what's going on. Hiya. There you go. Now I can actually, good morning. Hello, Arizona Sunflowers. What's happening, Hoot? Thank you for liking the stream, and thank you for telling people to like the stream. Yes, my hair is popping this morning. It was a very rock and roll night last night. It was a good time, but it was also a bittersweet experience. Our dear friend Adam is fighting the big C, and he came last night to the show. And gave everybody a kind of pep talk in only the way that people, I think, who have been recently confronted with their own mortality can do. And it can be a lot, especially something that, it's funny when you talk about the Whiskey A Go-Go, especially as a venue, where the doors used to be the house band. I don't know if a lot of people know that. But where we do the Ultimate Jam Night, which, by the way, starting in 2025 will be Hal Sparks Presents the Ultimate Jam Night. Just saying. We're going to make that happen. I have some ideas. But at that particular place, there's been a few people that have performed there and then went home and never went anywhere again after that. And it's just, or quite frankly, we're in the audience of it, I guess, too, all the way back to the, late 50s, early 60s or whatever when it started. Venice to Marisol, I cannot stream on Blue Sky, but I can post the show on Blue Sky in theory. The issue is computer power this morning. So if you guys are on Blue Sky, grab the share link in YouTube and share it on your channel. That will be just as good. That will help me out. I would do it, but it might throw my entire computer into a tizzy where I am because the internet here is fairly weak. It's not so much the computer; it's the actual the linkage, as it were. So, anyways, there's a bunch of people on, and this is, and it's interesting because the chat stops every so often, and then it kind of kickstarts again. See that? Kind of stops moving, and I can't tell if it's, yeah. So luckily that little character lets me know that we're still actively live. It's just a funny thing. I suppose I could I know what I'll do. I'll put the chat room up on my phone, and that way I'll be able to see it as well. But when people talk about like, a band's coming through and you're like, oh, maybe I'll see them next time or whatever. And my feeling has always been, what if there isn't one? And that it's not so much about the bands that are, yeah, it does scroll very fast. There we go. Now it's active again. Elon Musk is claiming he owns all the X accounts. Yeah, of course he does. He does. It's not private. It's not a public square. I got to tell you. But so in so much as like seeing a band that you like or a performer that you like, I don't want to be morose about it, but a lot of people don't know when it's going to be their last tour. And it's not just the old ones. Amy Winehouse fans will tell you this. And so you can't really tell when somebody has been, when they've got, one last show in them, or you'll catch them next time around. Yeah, Philip Bittner's going to be joining us second hour from Ukraine. Thanks, Alexa. My hair's okay. It's popping today. I had it all, metaled out last night. So, also, I've recently gotten myself a hairband like this. No pun intended. Because it's getting so long, I need it to wash my face. It's a welcome to the world of true hair care. Anyways, I want to wish everybody a early happy Thanksgiving. Also, I want to say that I'm thankful for you guys. I think as we've all gone through the tumultuous years since I started this thing in COVID, it has been a roller coaster ride, and it will be for the foreseeable future, and not even just for us. Apparently, maggots are having a big one as well, because I don't know if you know this, but apparently they're not that excited about Trump's picks for a lot of these ridiculous offices. Let's see if I can open this up. Here, there you go. I'll give you an example. Mr. I love the military more than anybody loves the military, and anybody in the whole military loves the military thing. Trump picked this dude who's like a hedge fund guy or a VC capitalist in Palm Beach to run the Navy. The least qualified and most overtly political cabinet in American history continues to expand, said Army veteran Paul Rieckhoff, founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. John Phelan is our next United States Secretary of the Navy. It would be a tremendous force for our naval service members and a steadfast leader in advancing my America First vision. He's not served in the Navy. He hasn't served in the military at all, but he's a big Trump donor. There's a reaction to it from actual Trump fans. No military experience. Feels like we're rewarding a friend donor, so we need a better explanation. A pro-Trump account on Twitter, Navy vet who calls himself a Navy vet and a constitutional conservative patriot, wrote a cockpick. Gun pick? We do know. I don't know what the blank out there is. As a veteran in the U.S. Navy, I want a sailor in charge, not some Wall Street billionaire with zero military experience. You got this wrong, DJT. K. Pritt asked why. The guy has zero military service. You guys are... sorry, maggots. Are you guys actually under the impression that he gives a shit? Is that the problem? Is that the issue? Is it you guys are just in this deluded space? Did you actually believe what he told you? Because I half the time maggots do this thing where they're like, if it's something they like, they're like, he's totally gonna do it. He's gonna nail it. It's gonna be amazing. And then if he does something they don't like, well, it's just hyperbole. He's just kind of bluffing. So they can kind of pick and choose from the bullshit meter, right? And I don't know why. Hold on. You guys own this stuff. So I don't know what to tell you. Tough shit. I'm worried about the damage that his choices will do. But again, there's nothing I can do about it, or anybody around me can do it. And so all we can really do is hope that either these people, it's so odd. Either they do exactly what he wants them to do, and you guys see that he doesn't want the best for the country or any of that shit, that was all nonsense, and you suddenly wake up, or they fight against him because once they get in there, they have a desire to, make this thing their own, and they're worried about their own legacy and not him. But ultimately, it's out of our hands. Welcome to the world of optimistic stoicism, or stoic optimism, right? I think it would be, somebody just laughed at me when you said he's going to destroy America. Well, it seems like that's what he's shooting for. He's literally trying to undermine all of these agencies. And it's like you'd expect it with the Department of Education. But like Linda McMahon, a lot of maggots think, oh, Linda McMahon, she's a business owner and she's got kids. I don't know. She's a mom and a grandmother. So maybe she'll care about education or whatever, or maybe she'll let it dwindle. And again, he puts women in charge of things that he wants to kill outright because he thinks if he can't, he can run it into the ground because that's what he thinks of women. But in the case of the Secretary of the Navy, honest to God, I think he just picked a dude who would name a ship after him immediately. That's all it is. And multiple ships. That's it. How will the tariffs go through? Some, not all. He will try to put discretionary tariffs on a bunch of stuff immediately, but he's got to get support from Congress and the Senate to make it hold. It's really odd that he picked a fight with Mexico and Canada because didn't he fix NAFTA? Where is that conversation online? Right? Where is that? Why in the absolute ass is all the maggots going yeah, Mexico and Canada are screwing us? I'm like, what was the USMCA you guys were crowing about? Didn't he rework NAFTA to benefit America? Right? Wasn't that the whole idea? By the way, share the show, hit the like, patreon.com/HalSparks, super chats, etc. I always forget to say that shit. Trying to be a professional. But apparently not apparently. The USMCA has a giant hole in it, which protects Chinese factories in Mexico. Okay? It was he or Lighthizer either knew it and didn't want to piss off China and specifically left that giant gap in there so that China could gain ground, or were too fucking stupid and didn't even see it. And so in the negotiation of USMCA, there is a giant hole in the description of what means a country of origin. And if you build a Chinese factory with Chinese workers in Mexico making Chinese products, the idea that that's a Mexican country of origin and that they should get the tariff benefits is absurd. The countries try to do this all the time. It's ridiculous. But apparently, under USMCA, you absolutely can, unless the administration does something specific about it, writes a specific tariff about it. And that's what the Biden administration has done. The Biden administration has raised the level of country of origin rules for all those Chinese factories and the Chinese good that were being made in Mexico, specifically to deal with this giant gaping hole in the USMCA. And so I got to tell you, I think a lot of this 25% tax on stuff or whatever is just his way of covering his ass on the holes in USMCA. It's not, watch, it'll be targeted to just the shit that China's making in those countries because he left that hole in there. It's not going to be a blanket tariff. These people are going to come in and start, implementing them, in a rollout fashion. And you're going to notice that it's just going to cover all the same shit Biden's tariffs do. Or they're just going to leave them in place and then claim they're his. When in reality, he's not responsible for the tariffs he's creating. He's responsible for the hole in the USMCA that made those tariffs necessary. Yeah. I have no idea. Yeah, Biden did this fix. Biden is the one who put this, the country of origin rules and even the Made in America rules, tightened them up to a point where Trump is going to have to relax them if he wants some of the import value that he's expecting to get. Okay. And when he does that, also, can I just say for the record, one little thing, as someone who currently right now, especially is having a really good hair day. Can I show you something real quick, kids? Because we've talked about how Trump isn't long for this world. Neither is his hair. I mean, notice that right there. Look at his hairline. I mean, it's not even close. Like the whole flap is just gone. You see that? Like, look, it goes halfway up his fucking head. Like, I'm telling you, he's lost a bunch of hair because the campaign was stressful and because he's old and because he gacks himself up on shitty food and stimulants. and he doesn't sleep and all that other stuff. But he's going to, like, they're going to do everything they can to cover this. But he's such an asshole narcissist that he either won't listen or he'll overdo it himself like he does with his weird face makeup. That's Howard Lutnick, by the way, with him there in that picture. That's the dude that Elon Musk wanted this guy for Treasury Secretary, and Trump chose Bessent instead. Oh, thank you. Hard to believe, but I don't feel as bad. I don't think he will get as much as he wants. I don't think so either, Susan. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. Yeah, not at all. And the weird part is that the people around him, again, the tick can't survive if the dog dies. And so there's a bunch of like self-involved assholes in this that are worried that he's going to fuck up the gravy train that Biden has created, that Biden has set up. Hold on. And come back, chat. I don't know where it went anywhere. There it is. Sometimes it takes a moment to reload. So, anyways, point being, oh my God, yeah, he's going bald, like very swiftly. And if you watch The Apprentice, the Trump depression has commenced. Prepare yourselves. Yeah, here's the issue, though. He's going to be in direct competition with the Wall Street class, and the Fed isn't going anywhere. The Fed's not going to just acquiesce to what he's doing. And the tariff shit will be so stark so quickly because it doesn't take a while. Some of these things, okay, I'll give you an example. I'll see if I can find this. But rents 2026 let's see. Yeah. So, I need to open this up. I can show it to you. Yeah. This is from November 15th, 2024. This is, so some things take a long time to fix. Okay? Let's start there. Some things you can fix relatively quickly because they're sort of topical. If you have too few of something or too many of something, let's say eggs, the prices go up, exorbitantly because you have an avian flu outbreak in the United States. And what you do to mitigate it is Canada doesn't have the same outbreak, or Mexico doesn't have the same outbreak, or some other country that produces a lot of eggs doesn't. So you intentionally, to mitigate it, you buy a bunch of eggs to, puff up the supply chain so you can bring the price back down until such time as you can even them out, whatever. You could do that fairly quickly. Think of it like with PPE. We didn't have enough masks and stuff during the pandemic, so the government just bought them or produced them themselves to fill in the gap because we needed these things, right? And if we had to pay for them, people would, people initially were, especially rich people were buying up boxes and boxes of them just so they'd have them, right? Okay. And then there are some things that just take a long time to get started again, right? To remedy. And one of the things that Harris was talking about was 3 million homes by the end of her first term, which does not sound like a lot of homes per se, but as far as first-time home buyers and the availability of stock on the market and gentrification and cleaning up of old sites and knocking down buildings and rebuilding ones that are there so they don't count as new, whatever. Even if you're built on the same site, it's the same size building. They wouldn't be considered new stock. It would just be making the stock that was there available, that kind of stuff. Baltimore, the home rows in Baltimore that need to be cleaned up, for example, same kind of situation. So that will take a while. Okay, that's why she said 3 million by the end of her first term. Okay, that's going to take a while. Well, guess what? None of that is going to happen under Trump because this is a guy whose bread and butter is high real estate rates, high prices for property, and the inability for people to get loans to buy him out. Let's say, Trump is on his heels with a loan that sucks, but at least it's under what the current loan rate is. Nobody could roll in and take his properties out from under him because they'd have to get a loan at a higher rate than the one he has, even if he's behind. So he can, and he can threaten the bank with that because the site will stay vacant. Yeah, increase supply, decrease prices. Exactly. Here's the problem primarily that he's going to have because they got no plan for this. Expects rents to start climbing again in 2025 or 2026. There's no mitigatory element of this at all. Not at all. This is from Forbes. There's been extensive monitoring of when the economy, the political and punditry proxy for life, will get back to the happy pre-pandemic, quote, normal, when prices and interest rates will recede and people can stop sweating because many millions have been. When shelter will be far more affordable again. Sadly, it's not going to happen. This is not the fault of the President-elect Trump, current President Biden, people on the left, people on the right. The country and the world are going through systemic changes and have been for a long time. Seeds planted and forgotten long ago have germinated. The compost for things as they started 40 years ago between 84 and 2024. The median household income in constant dollars, taking inflation into account, increased by only 40%. However, take $3 in 2024 to match the buying power of a single $1984. Prices of all kinds of things have grown massively faster than median incomes. Households at the 75th economic percentile or making more than 3/4 of the population below have been fine. Their incomes have grown at 10% or more a year, easily outstripping inflation. Those at the 50th percentile, another name for median or middle point, the middle class, haven't quite kept up with inflation, but far better than the 25th percentile, which has been losing 2 to 5% more every year. It's only been government programs and borrowing money that have kept the none well-to-do stable as costs have continued to escalate. That means the poor. That means poor white trash. Again, there are more poor white trash in this country than there are black people of all classes by a factor of 2 at least, right? We're talking about, 8% of the populace, excluding children, versus, 16 to 20% across the country. Some things that have moved back to normal, the ratio of job openings and unemployment, gross domestic product has recovered more than other advanced nations, but interest rates haven't returned yet, though the Fed has lowered its key rate. We're going to talk about this. Prices are unlikely to retreat. When asked the other week on Face the Nation about prices returning to pre-pandemic levels, rates, Mohammed El Arian, the president of Queen's College, Cambridge, chief economic advisor at Allianz, I'm going with Alliance. SE, chair of Gramercy Fund Management, about all this day. A titan in fixed income investment like bonds, smiled a moment and then said, "Yeah, and that's what everyone's expecting. But it's not going to happen. People hear inflation slowing and they think the cost of living will shrink, but that almost never happens." And now for the topic at hand, which is rental housing. Prices shot up like fireworks starting in the pandemic. It was part of a landlord greed, but it was so much more complex. People couldn't make as much money on bonds or loans, so many investors got into real estate, and with all the capital that had been available, it pushed up prices sharply to make a purchase deal made business sense. The buyers would have to raise rents a lot because a building, for it to be profitable, you can make like 2% on savings or what have you. On a low end stock, you can make 7%, and it's not a huge growth unless you have a ton of it, and it won't change your if you have to sell it, it's not a big deal. But if you sell a piece of real estate and it's got people in it, there are rules about how and when and if you can kick somebody out, about how and when you can change hands. All that stuff matters, right? And it means that your profit margin on it, again, Walmart, Target have about a 2% profit margin. For real estate, especially rental properties, to break even, just crest that, I think it's 4.1%. Okay? You have to make 4.1% profit on whatever you're renting it out for, or mainly because it's usually like the base interest rate plus the 2% over that you're paying for the property itself, plus 2% for maintenance and all kinds of other stuff. And if the person squats in the place or won't move out and you have to evict them and you have multiple properties, there's costs about all that kind of stuff that you accrue because, that you can't, it's very hard to kick somebody out if they don't want to leave. So it's expensive. You have to make 4.1% profit, which again is double what Walmart and Target make on their properties, to make a living. Now, the issue isn't, oh, greedy landlord, BlackRock does this or whatever, yada, yada, so fuck them. Agreed. If they and what will happen is they start selling to get rid of the properties. The issue is because the interest rates are high, people can't afford to buy them, and so they just hold on to them, pay the taxes, and leave them empty. And that drives up the prices of the places around them, right? Because they're trying to find a way to get out that doesn't cost them more than when they went in. And there's a spiral in certain areas that make that difficult or impossible. So that a big target of the landlord people are people who get an investment property, like an old couple that gets or a group of old couples, which happens a lot too, or a retirement community puts together an investment package, and they all get, they buy an apartment building together, and that apartment building provides them with a profit on that, and that's what they put their grandkids through college on. That's the grandpa and grandma money that spreads through the community, okay? And so if BlackRock, a lot of us, I think we can agree, these large investor groups, the hell with them. But the reality is that's the top 1% of these, of these purchases. And it makes up for maybe a significant amount, maybe 20% or even 30%. It's the other 70% that's just real money, real people who worked in factories or offices or whatever for their entire lives and are trying to figure out a way to make sure that they've got on a fixed income, more income coming in. So they take their nest egg and they invest it in this thing. And then if it has a return, they're good. Does that make sense? Because I know the general thought is fuck landlords, and but it's one of those things where, depending on the area, they fix up and carry these buildings that have people in them, real people, really living in them, actual humans, so that they can have a place to rent because they can't afford to buy a place, okay? And again, it's amazing to me, and this is sort of the economic vindictive nature of the fringes of the maggot world and of our side, that they would kill 80% of run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road investors who are like people who have a nest egg or they work to have a nest egg and they're like, I'm just going to eat this, or I can maybe turn it into a little more and stretch it out a little longer, or if it does very well, I can use it to put my grandkids through school. And so they do that kind of, it used to be 20% of the investor class was those people. Now it's about 80%, maybe 60-40, because there's other foreign investment that's not even part of this conversation in that regard. And there are a group of people across the political spectrum, but on the fringes, that would kill those 80% of people to get back at the 20% that they perceive as being evil or whatever, the BlackRocks of the world. Fuck BlackRock so much that will screw these like middle class investor groups, which is a bunch of people in a subdivision or in my mom's area in Frankfort, Kentucky, there are all these little like relatively almost borderline prefab homes. There's these little constructed neighborhoods of single story houses, 1-2 bedroom, most of them, kitchen, living room, garage. You've seen them. You know exactly the house I'm talking about. And they're full of grandparents. They're full of old people. They're the old people who are, it's a lot of baby boomers. They're transitioning through this period until they end up in a place for dawn, right? Those people are a huge part of this conversation. And Donald Trump doesn't give a rat fuck about them. Matter of fact, if he thinks he can screw them and buy up all these properties, or his buddies in the investor class around him could do that, like his buddy he's making Secretary of the Navy, that's what he will do. But our kind of fuck 'em attitude towards sort of run-of-the-mill people going, okay, I made this money, what do I do with it so that it lasts longer? There's so much fuck those people in this conversation that they run to MAGA as being the only support system they have, or they run to John Thune's Republican Party, right? That's really where they end up. And so they'll vote red or R across, and guarantee them the House and the Senate, and specifically the Senate, in an unbalanced way. Just die already. Right. Well, that's kind of the point. Yeah. Storage units are absolutely hot, Biz. You're absolutely right. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also want to show you something. Let's see if I can do this. Damn. So, does anybody remember, we talked a little bit ago when Jimmy Dore and that crowd were like sucking Putin's butthole, and they were like, these sanctions aren't having any effect on the Russian economy. Remember that stuff? Can you live in a storage unit? No, you cannot. They're not toiletries. My childhood was never normal or regular. I would say there's such a thing, really, if you're spoiled and you have taken everything for granted. Kids seem to take everything. Yes, there's a lot of that going around. There are a lot of people who think that the work of the government and the economy and all that stuff is either invisible or very black and white. And I will always be here to argue for complexity, ladies and gentlemen, because it is in complexity that you have the most freedoms. I know it seems like you don't, but think of the rules your parents set versus the rules you can set for yourself on your behavior, right? They're more finely sliced, what you'll allow yourself to do versus what your parents might have allowed you to do when you were 12. You understand? Because you may not, as an adult, in general, allow yourself to stay out after 10 o'clock because you got to get up tomorrow, right? You want cake for dinner? Okay. But you can do that. As a kid, not so much. But as an adult, you can do that, and then the next morning you go, that was a mistake. Right? And so you'll go, all right, I can have a slice of cake every so often, but good Lord. The more complexity you have, the more freedom you have, because you can open up to the things you can actually do instead of just like, I can do everything in this category or nothing in that category. That's where simple rules. That's what the 10 Commandments are. That's why we have, instead of thou shalt not kill in this country, we have like 18 different kinds of murder and manslaughter. Okay? That means you're more free. You have more options in an extreme circumstance instead of, nope, you killed somebody, we don't care why. Dead. We get to kill you because you killed somebody. All right. Anyways, point being is that while these guys are sucking up to, Putin and thinking that they're more free and whatever, it's just childish and weird. Like, it's so incomprehensibly stupid, it's hard to even grasp. But one of the things they've been saying is like, no matter what the West does with these stupid rules about the economy, these stupid rules, they keep telling, look, money is money. It's amazing to me that there's so many people who are perceptively, or at least, I guess, by label on the, quote, left, who are supposedly supporting Russia. And one of the biggest, well, I think they are actually actively probably paid to do it, but that's another thing entirely. But who believe that it is, they don't believe in money anyways. They're arguably, again, these are millionaire Marxists, so I can't tell what the fuck they're talking about half the time anyways. It's all hypocrisy. But they all seem to believe that, like, it is cruel and unusual punishment for the United States to put sanctions on Russia at all. How dare we set standards by which you can buy and sell things, especially when it comes to guns, drugs, and children and oil and the like, right? If you're going to murder a bunch of people, we're not interested in buying your products. Like, we set a moral standard in this country, and they're like, how dare you? right? Because think about what that is. Removing the Russian sanctions and removing Russia from the SWIFT system, for example, is a moral decision, right? Now, could other countries do that to the United States if they thought we were being, of course, have at it, right? And these people would cheer them on if they did. But Russia rolls in, murders a bunch of Ukrainians on the regular, and because we go, you can't do that, right? This, we all agreed these were the rules and you're breaking them. We're not going to allow you to play around in our sandbox anymore. Get the fuck out. And those folks are like, how dare you? This is terrible, right? How dare you set a moral standard to even try? You didn't have a moral standard before when J. Edgar Hoover ran things, or Lyndon Johnson was a prick, or Andrew Jackson was a racist. So America can't decide starting today to be better ever. Right. That's the principle of these folks. By that's Jimmy Dore. That's Hassan Abi. We can never, ever improve ourselves because that's the original sin is an anchor, not a ballast by which you recognize you might have done something wrong. So you use regret as a tool to act better. That's not what they're talking about. Doomed from the start. Original sin. It's biblical. They are the evangelicals of the, quote, left. They believe women deserve this because they ate the apple. Fuck them. I'm dead serious. All these guys think that the original sin of the United States, and they'll pick one at random. They don't even really give a shit. Okay? They will pick one at random and say, well, we did that a long time ago, or we did that, or George Bush took us into Iraq, or what have you, when a lot of us were marching, by the way, to try and stop it. Again, the electorate was divided, I would argue, by the response to 9/11, and that's where a lot of the seeds of this were planted. But the idea that you could go, okay, no more. We're going to start acting, again, America is an imperialist power. Nowhere near the old imperialist powers, and certainly not anywhere near what Russia's overt imperialism is or China's overt imperialism is. If you don't believe me, ask Ukraine and Tibet. Right? Do you, and again, Dor, Hassan, none of them believe that Tibet should be free. Remember when the left and our side of the argument, like Democrats and even a vast majority of Americans, I think, were free Tibet, right? We were for free Tibet. Like, you could see people wearing T-shirts across it. Rock stars wore those shirts, all that stuff. Why does China want Tibet? Because of the glacier water. Why does India want Tibet? Because they want to leave it alone. They think of it as a cultural point and as like an oblast or a state, right? But they don't want to overlap from it. It's just different. China needs the resources. That's all they give a shit about. And that's what the taking of Tibet has always been about. And it used to be a thing where people that you just assumed would be on our side of things were like, free Tibet, of course. Now they're against it because they are pro-imperialism when these countries do it. And when the United States decides, all right, look, we didn't make Germany start speaking English and we didn't make Japan start selling fucking hamburgers. Japanese culture still exists. German culture still exists after World War II. That's how we're going to operate going forward. We didn't, we might try to turn Iraq into a democracy under George Bush, but we're not going to force it on them because we can't. And we're certainly not going to Americanize and homogenize their stuff. And Donald Trump is pissed about us not taking the oil for a reason. Because morally we didn't. We decided that it's kind of an amazing thing. We fucking didn't. That's brand new on Earth. Usually you roll in, and if you help or assist somebody, you're like, we're going to take your resources in payment, right? And Trump wants to run most of our military like it's some sort of protection racket, right? Because he grew up in New York, and that's how shit runs. So overall, though, there's this idea that the sanctions were wrong of us to do it. Across the board on, from Dore to Rogan to all these, how dare we? How dare we look at what they're doing to the Ukrainians and impose sanctions? Who are we to do it? I don't know about you, but I woke up this morning a person with every available option in front of me as a human being, right? I mean, within reason. But I can choose today to be moral or immoral. And if I do more immoral things today, it does not remedy the immoral things that I had done in my past. You could argue that if I do moral things going forward, it doesn't, remove the damage I might have done with the immoral things I've done in my past, right? As a human being, every single one of us has a choice to make every day when we get up. But if there's a Hippocratic oath aspect to this, first do no harm, then we all have a responsibility to go, okay, I know what wrong is, and I may not have lived up to the standard, or people before me that, I wasn't even alive. But the America I'm in should live up to a better standard. Right? And we always have the option to do that. And so, anyways, the sanctions were, how dare we, and they're evil, and they're not even working, okay? Russia's never done better. Okay. Anybody remember, in the chat room, you guys will probably remember this. Anybody remember when, at one point, Russia crossed the 100 ruble to a dollar mark? It went to like 99, for 99 cents, you could get 100 rubles. And everybody was like, eek. And they did everything they could to reset that. I'll let the chat catch up to, these are worldly thoughts, think more heavenly, Hal. No, I can only operate in the world. If you behave well in this life, heaven will take care of itself. Right. Doc Spano knows exactly where I'm going. There was a point where it crossed the 100 mark, and we talked about it at the time. It was a huge piece of news. It was a big fucking deal. This is the current state of the Russian ruble. Let me bring this up on screen. That's fucking horrible. If that's your currency, you done, son. Look at that. Now, it looks like, okay, for $1, you can get 113 rubles. Let me flip this around so you can see the direction to POW. They've been fighting as much as they can to stabilize it all across here, artificially pumping it up. You can tell they're doing everything they can. And a lot of these little spikes that you'll see, this is September 3rd, since August, it has lost something in the order of like 24% of its worth. Since August. Can you imagine the dollar dropping from being worth $1 to being worth 75 cents? Not over the course of the 70s, not over the course of a decade because of oil embargoes and all kinds of shit like that. No. In a couple of months, in 3 months. Look at this. And in September, you could see these little spikes right here. These are loans where essentially these little jumps up here. This is Vladimir Putin going to his buddies, the oligarchs, and basically holding a gun to their head and saying, put some money into the coffers. Stabilize the ruble or I'm going to fucking kill you. And then, pow. Now, why would this be? Why would, for 1 ruble, you can get 8 cents? 113.16 rubles for $1. Now, let's look at the yuan. Where would it be in here? Okay, yuan. Yeah, there you go. Here's the Chinese yuan. Not the U.S. dollar. I don't want the U.S. dollar. I want it against the ruble. Russian ruble. There it is. Cool. So, just in case you think it's just us, that it's the dollar fucking with them and we're not buying rubles, or you can't use dollars to buy them. So against the dollar, you can't do it because of some international Soros-backed thing. No. Look at the ruble versus the Chinese yuan. Same fucking arc. Thump. This is just enormous. Here it is in September. You could get, we'll do it this way. Yeah. So August 1st, you could get 11. Yeah, let's go give them, well, we'll go here. What's the lowest point? 1177 in June, but basically around here. So close. 1175 in July. You could, one Chinese yuan, which is about 11 to the dollar, you could get 15 rubles for that. Okay? Sorry, you could get 11 rubles. Now you can get 15. Like, this is fucking brutal. Now, how did our Fed fix this issue with with our currency and inflation and all that kind of stuff? So let me see if I can bring up the inflation rate, which is holding steadily. You know how Trump is always saying, they say it's 9%, but it never goes away, right? You can bring it down to 2%, but it's still, the 9% is still there from a year before, and blah blah blah. Okay, so are the wage gains, dummy. But whatever. Russia's inflation rate is, let's see what it is. I'm trying to find the total GMT. Get out of here. I don't need this. I don't want the ruble. I know that. Yeah, 8.6%. Down from an 18-month high of 9.1% because nobody's buying anything, right? So, yeah, so the current inflation rate in Russia, right now, ours is, 2.5, 2.6%. Theirs is 8.6%. In September it was. And there's no reason why it would go down. It jumped a third of a point last week. Yeah, here we go. This is, let's see if I can open this for you guys. There you go. Check this. Now remember, Donald Trump thinks that Vladimir Putin is a genius, that he's at the top of his game, and that there's nobody sharper and nobody in Hollywood could play him in a movie just like Xi Jinping. We'll get to Xi Jinping in just a second. And Phil will be joining us, I believe, from Ukraine, and we'll talk more about this. This is November 20th. Russian consumer prices rose 0.37% in the latest week, up from 0.3% in the previous week, driven by price growth for butter, sunflower oil, dairy products, and potatoes, pushing, and by the way, look for this one, potatoes. All right. When you see rice consumption in China spike, because they already consume a lot of rice because it's a staple, if it spikes, that means they're buying less meat, less green vegetables. They're getting less nutrition. They're just going for calories. Okay? Think the Irish potato famine, right? Because when you run out of the staple, you run out of a caloric base. Russian purchases of potatoes are through the fucking roof. One of the reasons why the price keeps going up is because everybody's eating them. They're running out of them, and it is the caloric base of a ton of the food. The Economic Ministry estimated annual inflation to have reached 8.68% as of November 18th, up from 8.56%. It is trending upward as the value of the ruble goes down. Wednesday data suggested that inflation showed no signs of slowing despite monetary tightening measures. Interest rate hike on October 25th to 21%. Highest level in over 20 years. Prices rose by 0.3% in the week before. Prices for butter rose 1.4% during the week. top of his game. Vladimir Putin's super brilliant. He's Dr. Evil, right? Enterprises in the dairy industry have experienced increased costs for raw materials, logistics, employee wages. One of the reasons of the rise in raw materials and the increase in global prices for dairy fats, prices for potatoes, a staple food for many. Look at this. I didn't even pre-read this article. A staple food for many Russians have risen 74% since last December. Look at this. 74%. Oh, there's Phil. He's in the background. I will bring him in just 1 second. Let me do this. There it goes. Excellent. And if I may, we'll zoom and move. There you go. Kind of tilt them down there. And then this can, hold on 1 second. This guy. Okay. Let me do this. And yeah, take this. Doing this, and I'll bring him in just 1 second. Transparent. There we go. And ladies and gentlemen, if I may, I'll bring him in right now. Back. There you are. Hi there. Yeah, I zoomed you in. Sorry, because you had drifted to port. I will. Here, I'll back you out a little bit. Ring. There you go. How about that? It's just your. There you go. That's better. How about that? So welcome. I was just giving everybody kind of a rundown of the current economic slam that is happening in Russia right now. And I got to say, it's extraordinary. Like, I keep track of this stuff anyways. But, like, because I think I've been ate up with the election and, as everybody has, and that I just kind of, it was just one of the areas where I was gapping on it because I was focused so much on domestic issues. And there was this kind of underlying belief that not only was Russia making, they were making gains in the Donbass using these North Korean troops, and that was something to be concerned about. That definitely takes attention. It's very fancy when they drop a big ICBM with, a non-nuke version of it, but they use it to carry over, like, these cluster separation munitions, these MERs or whatever they're called. And it's very flashy, like shock and awe was, and you see how that worked out in Afghanistan. That solved it in 7 days, greeted as liberators, and off we went. We weren't stuck there for decades, But so the price of potatoes in Russia has gone up 74% since last December. Like that, again. That level, there's an overall like 9% running inflation that's going on in Russia at any given time, and it fluctuates around there. But it's a lot of dicking around the edges, quite frankly, because it more than likely, again, it's kind of like China's numbers. It's worse, but they find ways to short up. A lot of it's oligarchical, like blowback. They'll go find an oligarch with some money that isn't particularly friendly to Putin and seize his shit, and then technically the coffers are a little more full for about 3 weeks after the guy falls out a fucking window, and then they eat it. They blow through it, just like, Trump and donor money, right?
Yeah. The ruble is trading. Last I saw is 113 to the dollar.
Yeah.
I think it got as high as 115. It fluctuated today between those two numbers, like 110, 115.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. Which is terrible.
Yeah.
Gazprom shares in Gazprom, which is more than just Gazprom is more than just another company in Russia. Gazprom is a pillar of their entire financial structure because that's, it's often been said, it's not a country, it's a gas station with a nuclear arsenal. So if Gazprom is tanking, that's another indication that things are really bad. And then look, not finally, additionally, because there is no finally, there's just bad indicators everywhere.
Yeah.
But additionally, we are starting to hear from the Europeans more talk of, we're taking that $350 billion.
Yes.
We are going to appropriate the $350 billion in Russian oligarchic money and that's how we're going to fund. Because of course they are very concerned that we are not a reliable partner anymore.
Right.
That when Trump comes in, that it's not going to go well. And there are people who want to put on rose-colored glasses. There are people who are not maybe putting on rose-colored glasses, but who are hoping um, for a better outcome than we kind of all are concerned about because of his affection for Putin. Um, because of course he's a petty little man who, if you know, if we
Yeah.
can find a way to drive a wedge between him and Russia, he'll go right into it.
Sure.
But regardless, the Europeans, I mean, I would say, are almost at the point where they are accepting that the transatlantic relationship is irrevocably changed because of Trump's second term.
Yeah.
Um, and they're looking at other options. They're looking at the possibility of their own military alliance.
Hmm.
There was a lot of talk, I think, in the last 36, 48 hours or so, coming out of Nordic nations, Poland, the Baltic nations, and I know I'm forgetting some former Warsaw Pact nation, all of them saying we need to start developing our own defense posture,
Right.
independent of everybody else, not just the Americans, but like everybody, because we have a dog in this fight that they don't quite understand.
Right.
Um, Anybody who is not under Moscow's thumb,
Yeah.
that's their argument, and so for that to even be publicly discussed indicates that you know the Europeans are starting to look at how to continue this war with or without our assistance.
Right.
You know, so there's that going on. That's on the financial side of things. You're right. Things are not going well in Donbass and in Kursk.
Right.
Donbass more so than Kursk. But I saw somebody make the point today. Um, all they've managed to do in the last like 20 some odd days is take territory the size of London,
Right.
which is nothing to shake a stick at. But still, I mean, we drove to Baghdad in 3 weeks.
Exactly.
We this is not blitzkrieg.
No.
Um, and it is costing them 1,900 soldiers a day.
Yeah.
That's
It's the worst.
unsustainable. And
It's the
that's
worst ever. It
yeah,
is. I mean, I don't even think like that's freaking hard to just grasp on an emotional level, much less a material like functioning level. 1,900 soldiers a day, and a lot of them are these brand new North Korean soldiers, right? Which
yeah,
again, it's one thing if you think your people are cannon fodder. It's another thing entirely if you think that somebody else's people are cannon fodder. That starts to rub them a little the wrong way, one would think.
yeah. And what is? I mean, I don't think Kim Jong Un you know gives a rat's ass about his people.
Right.
But what's he getting in return?
Yeah.
And what will that mean for Pyongyang ultimately? Is he getting missile technology? Is he
Right.
getting money to prop up his? He is DPRK is a very, very poor country. Right? Not that Russia again has it in their financial capability to help the DPRK. Look, things are not going well
Yeah.
for Russia. Despite all of what the guys who are saying, see, we told you, you can,
Right.
Russia's power is inevitable, and they're going to take Donbass, and then they're going to take Kursk, and then once they punch through the Ukrainian lines, there's nothing behind them all the way to Kiev. They'll just roll into Kiev.
Right.
And I've traveled for the last 3 years the length and breadth of this country where I can and where I'm able to get to with relative safety because I'm old
Yeah.
and fat. If they think that there is no strategic depth in Ukraine,
Right.
they're going to learn a really difficult lesson, because these guys for 3 years have been building and building and building defensive lines,
Mm-hmm.
tank traps, uh, shoring up defenses.
Right.
Yes, there's a manpower problem on the Ukrainian side, but I really don't think that. I think that if there was to be some sort, there's concern of an attack on either the city of Zaporizhia or the city of Dnipropetrovsk. Dnipro. The
Mm-hmm.
Russians call it Dnipropetrovsk
Yeah.
from their colonial days. And there's concern both of those cities might see some sort of assault by Russian forces. And
Mm-hmm.
I think General Syrskyi, the general in charge of all Ukrainian forces today, said, yeah, yeah, we're aware of all these plans that the Russians have for some sort of offensive, but we cannot win this war simply fighting on the defensive. So
Right.
we will counterattack. There
Yeah.
will be a counteroffensive. And they're preparing for it. How effective it's going to be, where it's going to come from, that we don't know, and nor should we.
Right.
But they're not just this concept that I'm starting to see, aside from like ignoring the economic problems that's in Moscow right now,
Yeah.
ignoring the fact that for some reason Russia feels the need to call on Pyongyang for assistance. Why would you do that if you're winning already?
Right.
Aside from the fact that they're pulling out these hypersonic missiles, and kind of all that is meant to do is to scare you.
Yeah. Well, also,
They,
go ahead. Sorry,
they've
finish your
been
thought.
firing, let me just
Yeah.
finish. Let me finish my thought. They've been firing nuclear-capable missiles at us since the beginning of the war.
Right.
Iskander missiles are capable of carrying
Carrying a
nuclear
warhead. Yeah.
Kinjal hypersonic missiles, it's my understanding,
Mm-hmm.
can carry a certain payload of a nuclear weapon. This
Right.
is nothing new.
Right.
All of this was meant to do was scare you, just like. I could go on another tangent. I know you want to make a point, but we
Yeah.
do have to talk about this whole thing with Klitschko and Rogan.
Yeah. Yeah.
But go for it.
Oh, well, again, part of the conversation that we have about the missiles that Russia is using, there's always this belief, and I don't know why, because you'd think we'd wise up to this at some point, that it's all strategy, that they have figured out at some point, like that they're super smart and they're always one step ahead, or they're doing something. And I think it behooves you to think in those terms most of the time anyways. It's a healthy idea to always assume maybe they're up to something, maybe whatever. But you can also give them too much credit. And a lot of it looks like they're burrowing into stock, that they're taking their missiles that would be used for a larger European war, and that's the stock that they have sitting there because you don't need it in this kind of a conflict. You don't need it in something like Georgia. You don't need it in something like Chechnya. This is the kind of shit you have if you have a European war, if World War III breaks out. And they're breaking into that missile use, that function, that class of weaponry, because they've run out, because they don't have a supply of the mid-range stuff, that they're not keeping up with the amount and the volume of artillery that they're sending in. And so part of it might be that they're trying to scare the West, and it works, and they sell this, and they obviously send a fucking memo to people like Joe Rogan and go piss yourself on air so that people are scared of World War III. Whatever. It's not working anyways. But a lot of it has to do with with them going, oh my God, they used a weapon you would normally use for a nuke or something like that. Yeah, because they've run out of everything else. They don't have a supply. And the shit they got from Iran and even the stuff they got from North Korea is ass. And where are they going to buy the more of them from? China? China just had its own rocket problem where they had a bunch of missiles that somebody had stolen the fuel and replaced it with water. So when they went and checked they did their kind of military check on stuff, because Xi Jinping out of nowhere decided he wanted a spot check, they found that a bunch of these missiles where they should have liquid fuel in them, or even solid fuel in some cases, it was just water. They literally it was like 90% water. They had drained the fuel and sold it, right? And Russia has that oligarch problem. The same thing with the Chinese military guys are like who stare at,
Kleptocracy. It's a kleptocracy.
and they sit there and they stare at this shit on on the shelf and going, we're never going to use this shit. So 5 years ago, like we're not going to fucking attack Taiwan. He always says that shit. So you know what? My brother has a friend who can sell this fuel in Cambodia for airplanes, and we dilute it and they can transfer it. So how about on the down low, pull a truck up here Friday and we'll get you some. And then, that worked. See you next Friday. And then after a couple of years, there's nothing, all the bourbon is iced tea. That's how it works. Yeah. That's how shit like that happens. That's why you have appropriations. It's why the boring part of the Congress is important, because they sit there and make sure somebody walks through these fucking warehouses and goes, yep, there it is. Officious asshole that they are with their clipboard, they make sure that somebody hasn't run off with this fucking stuff. And that's where Russia and China are. I wanted to show something real quick, if I could. And this is, me, like I'm the same way you kind of are studied up about Russia, I am about China. And right. There's so much to this that there's paralleling exactly. Russia and China are in the same fucking problem right now. They're in the same circle of hell, and there's so many parallels to what's going on. So let me show you this real quick. So this is, if I may, China's industrial profits fall by 10% in October as deflation worries linger. This is not Trump's tariffs. This has nothing to do. This is the rest of the world post-COVID realizing us, the Europeans, Mexico, South America, even the Middle East, realizing that, oh shit, if we have to rely on China for certain goods, we're screwed. And that 10, 12% or whatever that every country is reshoring again, whether it's PPE, whether it's foodstuffs or whatever that they were relying on, pharmaceuticals, whatever that was, is shaving what's amounting to a quarter off the entire Chinese economy, which is on the back foot to begin with. And now 10% since October. Now, what impact is that having on the Chinese populace? This is this is Barron's, which is not weird to see them seeing articles about this. But it's been murder season. The murder season in China is usually in the spring. There's this weird thing they call revenge against society killings, where people get fed up. There's no, everybody thinks it's a communist country. There's no social safety net. You're on your fucking own. Healthcare is expensive. It's way worse than over here. There are way more sick people by volume. There are more, sick and chronically ill people in China than there are in the entire population of the United States. All this bullshit, RFK Jr. saying we're the sickest country in the world is just garbage. And we actually have, resources here. They do not. So these people snap and they start killing people. And it's gotten so bad, even the Washington Post is noticing. They blow this off a lot of times. It's amazing to me that the Washington Post just can't seem to cover this stuff. And now they finally are. Violent attacks in China fuels concerns. Some are taking revenge on society. This is not some are taking fuels concerns. This is them soft pedaling it. This is like New York Times talking about Russia. This is the Washington Post does it about China. So, they're this is self-evident 2 years ago, much less now. There was a guy. These are people who are putting flowers out at the site of a murder that happened. This guy drove his car. There's this jogging track around this stadium. You can see the stadium in the background. There's a jogging track and a walking track, and people exercise there. And then there was also some sort of sporting event going on at the time or letting out. And this guy just drove his car on the walking track around the stadium, and he killed 35 people, wounding 40, permanently. He ran over them with his car, and then there was another story of a guy who killed 8 people, stabbed 17 at a vocational school in China. There was a guy who drove his car into the parking lot of an elementary school as it was letting out, running over the kids. There's a lot of kid murder in China because that's the way you get revenge on societies, you attack the new generation. So they murder kids. That's this big. It is. And the way they talk about it is so fucking soft pedal. Behind these recent violent attacks, I see grassroots people with issues who have a lot of pent up anger and stress. Like, no, it's ego. These people have been told that they deserve better, and then they're not getting it, and so they take it out on society. Again, the stress selling. But the point is, there's a bunch of this shit that's been going on in Russia for years. Like I said, you want to go down a rabbit hole, go look at Russian group fights on YouTube. Just people fucking gathering just to beat the snot out of each other because they have nothing better to do. Yep. Right? It's been going on for years. By
alcohol.
Yeah, drunk and angry and fighting.
Drunk and angry Russians, and then now contribute or exacerbate that by letting a bunch of prisoners out of their cells to go fight here, and if they survive, they're given clemency. Not only that, but there are those guys out there in Russia who are going to be returning with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And like
they're not going to treat it. They don't have any system.
No, they don't have any system for that.
Right.
Not that Ukraine isn't going to have that problem either.
Every country does. Right.
Every country does. But I've done repeated reports about this.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is between Ukraine and Russia. Russia's psychological program of help is, here's a bottle of vodka.
Right.
Shut the fuck up. Go home.
Yeah.
Go home. And what that generally means is that the wife is the one who gets it. And did you know that there was a law passed in Russia years ago, long before the war started, that legalized domestic violence?
Right.
It is legal to beat your wife in Russia.
Yeah, during Trump, that was a big story.
Probably, yeah. No, I think it was even earlier than that, because I had a friend who was a victim of this, and she was very dear to my heart. And sadly, we've fallen out over the war because she's gone full Z, which is to say pro-Putin.
Right.
And I loved her dearly. I watched her grow up. She was a beautiful young woman who I adored. And the age difference was too great for us to, think about anything romantic. But she was a person I truly adored, and she ended up marrying one of these guys,
right,
who drank every night, who was violent. And so I want to say this was around. Oh, I know exactly when this was. This was the white ribbon protests when Putin came back and took the place from Medvedev, and they just did musical chairs.
Right.
You remember when that happened?
Yeah.
So I want to say that's later. That's like 2012 or something like that.
Well, no, in 2017, here's what I'm talking about. Like let's see, I can bring this up here. This is what I'm talking about. February of 2017, this was one of the big stories because we'd had this whole thing with Trump and Russia and his
friendliness. 2017?
2017. This is a story Russia, domestic violence is never okay. Why did Russia just decriminalize it? In summer of 2016, women's rights activists in Russia celebrated the country passed its first law directing.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the first law directly targeting domestic abuse. For every, so they managed to make they improved it. Less than a year later, it looks like that progress has been undone. Earlier this month, Russia's parliament voted by an overwhelming majority, 380 to 3, in favor of an amendment that decriminalizes domestic abuse. February, like right after Trump took power.
My friend, who I was just telling you about.
Yeah.
My friend, who I was just telling you about, she tried to divorce her husband, and they had a 3-year-old child at the time. And not to get too graphic, but he curb stomped her right in front of her child.
Whoa.
Got away with it scot-free. No consequences. None whatsoever. Drug addict, alcoholic, did that right in front of their 3-year-old daughter to their mother, and nothing happened to him. Look, these autocratic systems, they're easier to govern, obviously, because you can just do what you want. If you're in charge, if you're the big dog in an autocratic system, you can do what you want. And that kind of dysfunction and cruelty to your own people, it results in stuff like this. Not that we are a violent we are violence free in the United States or in the West. But it's this cynical approach to just stick your head in the sand. Don't bother getting worried about this stuff, which only exacerbates it, of course. But as long as the ruling class is fine, they face no repercussions.
Right.
I'm betting that's the case in China, but I know that that's the case. But then eventually, comeuppance is due. All of this kind of stuff, whether it is letting criminals out to go fight a war and then giving them clemency, whether it is lacking to give any kind of psychological care for war, for those traumatized by the war here, which has been brutal on Russian forces, whatever it is, there's a storm is coming. I remember when we first started talking, you and I, Hal. What did I say? The Russian people suffer and they suffer and they suffer and they suffer until they can't suffer anymore.
Right.
And then there is violent upheaval. I think Putin's in trouble. I have said that for a while, not because I thought it was imminent, but because there's no good out for him.
Right.
There's no good path to where he dies peacefully in his bed. I really don't believe that. I don't think he's going to pull a Stalin. I think at some point the Russian people are going to say, screw this.
Yeah, it gets bad.
And maybe it's because of the financial collapse. Maybe it's because society is so frayed because of the stress on them. Unfortunately, I was a little ill this morning. I got a little stomach bug or something. So I had to postpone my interview with a Russian dissident or a Russian in exile.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to do that for next week's episode. I know there won't be a new episode this week because of this illness.
Sure.
But I will talk to this guy, and I want to talk to him about this because this can't be ignored. And I just read an article. I forget where it was. I read an article about Putin's inevitable fall, which will come at some point. And they were arguing that we have to approach whatever happens next with Russia and the Russian Federation.
Right.
We have to approach it differently than we did in 1991. We cannot. We can't. We can't go flooding the place with money. If we are going to do some sort of Marshall Plan, which the article was arguing against, I haven't made up my mind about it.
Here's the thing. I think, again, one of the things is the only thing that's really going to be different that we can measure and that we can actually do anything about, depending on if Trump runs in to try and salvage his buddy's country, if it collapses or some shit happens, and Medvedev or somebody like that, whispers sweet nothings in his ear, and he tries to get us to do like, oh, poor Russia, some shit like that. Short of that, I think the difference this time is trust. That back then we were wanting to trust so much and we were willing to trust them so much that when it fell, we bought hook, line, and sinker that they were willing to be open and that they were, that it wouldn't turn into this kleptocratic mafia state that it turned into.
That they would make the reforms.
Right.
The reforms we all know, including the Russians themselves, that needs to be done.
Yeah, and they never did. And they never intended to. And I will stand by my rope-a-dope theory because hide your strength and bide your time is the same thing as saying rope-a-dope. And the Chinese pretended to be weaker and more impoverished than they were. And then one of the reasons why China goes, there's two reasons. One of the reasons why China says, we've beaten poverty faster than anybody else in the world, right? You hear this story all the time. We brought 300 million people out of poverty like that. Okay, first of all, no, you didn't. Trade with the West did that. American consumers largely did that, if you want to say it. The other thing is that you weren't even counting the impoverished before then. You were puffing the number up. And then afterwards, you're puffing up the numbers of the people who've improved. So you had like fake people that didn't exist that were allegedly poor and making less than $2 a day, like they don't even show up economically. That's because they don't show up at all. They're not alive. They're not real people. You're making them up. You're padding your population with people that can't have an income, and it won't show up when in financial stuff because they don't fucking exist. You can just go, there's a bunch of farmers out there. I don't even know what the fuck they make. It's because they're not alive. Those people aren't there. And then once you bring everything back, then you start we've made these great advances forward. Then you start making up fake people. It's like selling the electric cars, selling these cars to people that don't exist. So these are registered sales to people that have been dead for 10 years or were never born in the first place. Like, that's what these rows of cars sitting in the middle of fields rotting are. That's why BYD is the biggest electric car company in the world, because they don't have to have customers. They don't exist. They're selling cars to a fucking field and saying, yes, Jacob Wu bought this car on this date and he drives it around. No, he doesn't. It's sitting in a field and there is no Jacob Wu. Like that. And Russia has a similar situation with their economy, is that they thought Europe was more reliant on them for fuel than actually turned out to be the case. Even in the case of Germany, we were able to, between us and Norway and Qatar, we were able to backfill their natural gas needs in less than 4 months. The reason everybody was afraid of Russia is because the transition to get them to have another source besides Russia would take a decade and it'll fuck everything up and blah, blah, blah. And it took months. And now they're like, oh yeah, and we get mostly from Norway and Qatar. Like, not even the United States. Like, we sell a bunch of shit, but we don't need to. We'd rather use ours at a premium, right? It's worth more not to ship it, to turn it into liquid natural gas and then convert it back, right? It adds expense. So it's better to sell it here and keep the prices low. That's what we've been doing. But it's amazing to me that this fucking puffery goes on, that this illusion of economic strength and military viability and all this stuff, and it's like more than the ongoing war, it's the beast that just refuses to die until it's killed outright.
And the other thing about it is Americans' lack of understanding of what's happening in this conflict is and I put squarely a huge chunk of the responsibility on that on my former vocation and the members in that former vocation. We have not covered this war properly at all. The Western press has done a really shoddy job of covering that. That's why you have Timmy Tuberville today tweeting out that we've spent $211 billion on the war, when actually, no, that figure is Russia has spent $211 billion.
Right.
Moron.
Yeah.
That's why we have, Rogan, whose audience, should not be as large as it is, but whatever, sitting there bleeding out expletives without, any responsibility for Russia. It's all our fault. We did. I thought Klitschko's response, the younger of the two Klitschko brothers, his response was great.
Yep.
And he's like, have me on.
I'll set you straight, asshole. Right.
I'll set you straight. You think he's going to do it? Nah, of course not.
You got to be in studio with him. And so he can get out of a lot of the really important interviews because he doesn't do any remotely.
Multi-millionaire.
Yeah, you got to.
Multi-millionaire.
Well, and also
he can be in Austin tomorrow.
Right. But that'll well,
he doesn't want him.
Right.
He doesn't want him on. He doesn't want him on. He wants Tulsi Gabbard on.
Right.
He wants people that are going to just regurgitate Russian talking points.
Yep.
But I also thought the other thing that Klitschko said was really was smart of him to say, and that is, you're being played, man. You're being played. You are being manipulated and scared on purpose. That's what they want you to do, And
right.
I think that's an important message to keep pushing, especially to guys like Rogan. But I mean, even not just getting the message out repeatedly that the big bad scary bear that is going to nuke everybody is not scary.
Right.
And it is, I mean, you don't want to play, again, I'll repeat it, you don't want to play chicken with nuclear weapons. But at the same time, you can't just bow to everything that Vladimir Putin says, because, then
but he
what country with a nuke is ever going to give up their nukes again?
Right. And if I may, this is what you were talking about earlier about Gazprom.
Ooh, $1.
$1. Gazprom, which is the biggest oil and gas company in Russia, its shares cost $1. Now, let's say you're one of Trump's buddies. If you can buy a shit ton of Gazprom stocks via crypto bounce exchange, where you're buying it under the table, but you're not reporting it because you're doing it through the Bank of Cyprus or some shit, you're getting around sanctions to buy it, which is, by the way, one of the other reasons why it's low is because the sanctions keep people from, externally buying it and driving up the price a little bit. But let's say you buy it through, a bank shot, billiard scheme of money laundering. All it's got to do is go up $1 to $1.20, and you've made 20% on whatever that millions or billions is. So if you salvage it, it drops, and then you wait till Trump comes in, and Trump does them one favor. You're like, fuck it, it's going to go to $1.30, which isn't a lot, still shit for Russia. But then you try and, well, the other thing is, I was about to tell you, then you sell it. But the operative thing is try and sell it, because again, who the fuck is going to buy it? Because, again, we're watching.
Buy a bunch of rupees.
Yeah, right.
You can buy a bunch of rupees.
Yeah, a bunch of Indian rupees.
South African rand.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you'll have to do. That's what you have to bounce buy it through other stuff, right? And
also,
yeah.
If Uncle Sam finds out, you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
You're breaking sanctions, man.
Yeah.
And we don't joke about that. The IRS does not joke about that.
Mm-mm.
So you would have to keep it in rands or rupees,
right?
Because the second, I'm not a financier, but maybe there's a way to go to some sort of offshore and come back to dollars, and I don't know, but for darn sure it wouldn't be easy, and you'd take a pretty big chunk of it you'd lose.
Mm-hmm.
So it all you'd have to play it all out and figure it all out, and I guess that's what financiers do. But regardless, you're breaking the law.
Yeah,
you're breaking the law, and if the IRS finds out, you're gonna face consequences. So, yeah, I mean, this whole thing, there is no upside for Russia. They're making incremental gains on the battlefield. Their finances are in damn near free fall.
Mm-hmm.
Putin is, he may still have his cult of personality, but that's not going to last him forever.
Right.
I mean, I heard today that his own daughter has disowned him, changed her name.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where she lives, because she lives in anonymity because of connection to her father.
Sure.
But there are these tales out there that she is now estranged from him.
Act of survival.
Look, things are not going well.
Mm-mm.
They're not going well for Russia, no matter what folks try to tell you. Look at the battlefield games that they're having. The battlefield games are not
negligible. Right. For the price they're paying?
They're not big for the price they're paying. Now, here's the bad news.
Yeah.
Here's the bad news. Ukraine is going to have a hard winter. This is going to be really difficult. The energy sector is in trouble. They are targeting the energy sector.
Right.
And they've never stopped targeting the energy sector. So we are hearing reports of certain sectors of Ukraine that will be losing power for 12, 18 hours a day on the regular.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of central heating that is done, central planning in cities and towns throughout Ukraine.
Yep.
So, hopefully, people would not be. I mean, some folks probably will die from exposure.
Yeah.
Um, but hopefully that will not be in vast numbers. Obviously, it's a priority for the government. They're looking into all kinds of ways to get energy back up and going.
Yeah.
We all have little space heaters and stuff, and I mean, even to the point of you can buy little. Called trench candles, and they're just they're like tins of beans or something emptied
Right.
out. Then you fill it with paraffin, and
Yep.
you put a cardboard thing in there, and then it burns the paraffin very, very slowly. But you put that in a room, a 6 by 6 room, which isn't much larger than the room I'm sitting in right now. Close the door, light 2 or 3 of these things. You're not comfortable, but you're not going to freeze to death.
Right.
And these are resourceful people, so
Sure.
they're going to get through it. But this is going to be a very difficult winter.
Well, so just so you know,
we're going to have to face
there's
that.
been obviously, if the right people are squealing, we know something good is happening.
Yeah.
And Mike Lee has flipped out because the Biden administration, Office of Management and Budget, has asked Congress to release $24 billion
Yes.
to Ukraine, which is, by the way he's doing it is really fascinating because, one, he just forgave $4.7 billion in loans to Ukraine, which is in his discretionary amount. He's basically, there's not going to be a dollar of leftover discretionary funds in the White House OMB when he leaves office. Not a fucking penny. Usually there's some sort of overlap because you're dealing with like the debt and somebody's trying to, under normal circumstances, say we lowered the deficit, as far as the spending for government while we were there. At this point, it's such an emergency, nobody gives a shit. And so Biden's going to take every discretionary penny that they have access to and say, release this. And you'll see a bunch of people squealing about it, but they really can't do anything. And the way he did this was really smart. Okay. So of the $24 billion, $8 billion of it goes to U.S. companies that supply arms to Ukraine. So it is money that goes to those companies. Now, where are those companies? Where's that $8 billion going? It's going to South Carolina. It's going to Arkansas. It's going to fucking
Pennsylvania.
Idaho. It's going to Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania's got that enormous ammo factory.
Yep. But the point is none of these Republicans in these red states are going to say no to this money. That's why a bunch of these people are squealing.
Exactly.
They're not going to say no to $8 billion coming into their state to employ people and feed people and all that kind of stuff while they make this shit. They're just not going to do it. The other is $16 billion is to replenish the U.S. arsenal to replace the stuff that we've given to Ukraine. And that gives us room in the next month to give more of that stuff to Ukraine. So the idea is that if we have this much excess, we can give it to Ukraine. But if we don't have any excess, we can't give any away because there's this readiness principle. So if you put $16 billion in to create,
I don't know how that happened.
You've got gestures turned on. It's adorable. Yeah, I forget. It's like one of those or what? Yeah, there it is. That's what it was. It was the peace symbol. Is the one that does it. So if again, that's $16 billion that goes into those same states to replenish our arsenal. Find me a Republican that's going to go to the floor besides Rand Paul of the Senate and say, we can't give $16 billion to backfill all the arms that we've given to, the UN peacekeeping forces or Ukraine or Israel or any of that. You're not going to find them for 2 reasons. One, they don't have the guts to say it. And 2, their states rely on those funds because ammunition and weapons are one of the few things that their biggest factories make in these red states. Right? This is sort of a jingoistic manufacturing base that exists in these places where they all beat their chest is federal spending, federal tax dollars. And this is, money in Biden's military budget that he has the right to use to improve American readiness. And that's how you do it. So $24 billion, $8 billion earmarked specifically to fill these contracts, which we need. And that will give the overage where the previous order to give the overage to Ukraine can happen. So it triggers a domino. And then $16 billion to improve the stocks, which again, find me the Republican that's going to that's going to go to the fuck. Even Mike Lee, who tweeted about it, but fuck him. He's not going to go to the fucking floor and try to stop it. So shut the fuck up. Unless, I don't care what you tweet about. I don't give a shit what these assholes say in an interview. If you're not willing to go to the floor of the Senate and put a stop to it or put an anonymous hold on it or admit or even filibuster it or something, then who gives a goddamn? You can say whatever you want on Twitter. It's not changing the material world at all.
And if the Europeans do follow through on this idea of seizing 300, well, not seizing, but using, because the funds are already frozen, $350 billion that these Russian oligarchs have in Swiss bank accounts and you know, in properties and yachts in London and the south of France. If the Europeans follow through with that, who's to say? I mean, the expertise of my knowledge has limits, but there's certainly, I would think, the possibility that $350 billion goes right over to South Carolina, goes right over to Raytheon, goes right over to Lockheed Martin, and the cash starts flowing. And who's going to say boo? You know, who's going to say, oh, no, we don't want all this money.
Oh, send it back, baby. It's like the Department of Education bullshit that Trump's talking about. Like, we're going to kill the Department of Education. Hey, asshole, where do you think the vast majority of the funds to support underprivileged schools goes to? Red states. Because, again, there's more poor white trash in this country than there are black people of every economic strata. Period. So the vast majority of the Department of Education's funds goes to red states to make these kind of rural schools not, freeze in the winter and that kind of shit like that. And cut it off. Go for it. Let the states backfill that money and see how much they squawk. Because again, I don't give a shit what Trump says, and I don't give a shit what these senators say on Twitter. It's what they actually legislate that ultimately will matter. And we're going to see increasingly, just like in this situation, you see Mike Lee bitch about this $24 billion, but he's not going to do a fucking thing. And Anthony Blinken came out and said, before Biden leaves, they're going to give Ukraine everything it needs to fight through 2025. Through 2025. Meaning that if there's a point where they're really running out of shit, we're talking about the lead up into the midterms. Yeah.
And if they do it, and I obviously have a dog in this fight, so I sincerely hope they do. Mm-hmm. Putin doesn't last through 2025.
Right. Agreed.
Maybe he does, but if I were a betting man, I'd put a buck on it. Sure.
Yeah.
He is. They are in serious freaking trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, their foreign secretary cannot travel except to places like Kazakhstan and Afghanistan, which he did in the last 48 hours or something. He can't attend the UN Security Council meeting. He can't go to, they're screwed. They're really, really, for generations, probably.
Yeah.
So if the Biden administration can find a way to Trump proof, which is the thing that really scares me, because Trump, as we've discussed, there is a problem with Trump, and that is he doesn't play by the rules, and he goes, sue me, sort of thing. He does it, and then after the fact, it's like, well, try and hold me responsible. That's our biggest problem, I think, perhaps. But if they can find a way around that. And the Biden administration say one thing. You can say one thing about Biden's presidency. The dude knows how Washington works, right? And he knows how the international community works.
Yep.
And if he can truly make it so that Ukraine can keep up the fight with the assistance of the European Union, even if Trump does the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
If they can keep fighting through 2025, Russia's going to be in trouble. It's going to be
Right.
real trouble. Because like we started this very conversation, their economy is collapsing.
Hmm.
And I remember living in Moscow in the 90s. And one of the things that ousted Yeltsin, they overlooked his drunkenness. They overlooked his buffoonery.
Right.
What happened was the ruble absolutely tanked.
Yeah.
I'd have to look up the facts and the figures, but I remember people having a rush on the bank to try and get everything out in rubles and convert it into dollars. And that was 98,
Yeah.
1998. And it was the writing on the wall that we've got to get rid of Yeltsin and we've got to find a replacement, because my entire life savings just went from, $5,000 to $150.
Right.
That's sort of that getting the rug pulled out from you. The Russians are notorious at their capability of withstanding pain and suffering, but when they decide enough's enough, things get pretty wild pretty quick. So we'll see if the Biden administration can truly make that happen. We can make it through 2025. We can make it through the winter.
Yep.
It'll be hard. It's going to be hard.
Right.
And also, look, they will go on the offensive. They will try to go for. I don't think they have the capacity to go for Kharkiv.
Right.
I know there was some pushback recently in Kharkiv that the Ukrainians were able to push Russian forces back. Kharkiv is a massive city, huge industrial base for Ukraine. But most importantly, they do not have the capacity to take Odessa. And they don't have the capacity to take Kiev.
Right.
And if they can't take Kiev and they can't Odessa, there's no way for them to win this war.
Right. It's just a matter. It's a grind. It's a grind to whatever the result is. And here's the interesting thing about the Trump situation that I think everybody it seems to be the wild card. So you kind of game out the possibility of the myriad of ways this shit could go. And one of the things that I think he's up against is that if there's an immediate, once he gets in, this kind of leveraging against Zelensky with stuff that's already gone out the door or already is ordered to go out the door. And all of a sudden, Russia, Russia does this big push and Trump drops Ukraine's defenses, in theory, is the idea, is that he's going to go through with this shit. If that happens, it's bad no matter what, people think, nobody cares about what Trump does and he'll get away with everything. His margin was very small, and the American people will not react positively to this if there are a bunch of stories of Ukrainians just dying hand over fist. If Russia just runs away with it, yet they do it. Yes.
Video.
Yes.
Video.
Right.
Video. That's the thing.
That Americans will see public, this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just abstract. It's not just Joe Rogan going, everybody needs to sit around the table and work it out. Dead Ukrainian civilians by the thousands.
Yes.
And
so he can't allow that. He's got it. And he ran on.
He can't allow that.
He ran as Santa Claus.
And also he ran as Santa Claus. And secondly, that he's got hawks in his own cabinet and his own MAGA world that don't give a shit about Ukraine. They do care deeply about China.
And Rubio is no fan of Russia or China. Specifically, he looks at Russia as a proxy for China. So whether or not, if that's the motivating force that gets him off his ass, fine. But it's a curious choice. Oh, did I lose you? Did you lose me?
Nope.
There you are.
We're having a little bit of
lag.
Yeah, a little bit of lag.
Okay. We're getting near the end of the hour, so it's okay.
I think there are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine. I think you're right. I think it's twofold. I think, does the American public sit by and watch the brutality of the Russian military just massacring people as they go through? Because that's what they'll have to do. That's what they're going to have to do. They cannot leave a city like Dnipro in their rear without having subdued it or
Yeah.
destroyed it. And that's thousands and thousands of Ukrainians, not just soldiers. And secondly, there are those who are like, our main battle is the coming battle with China. What message does that send to Taiwan? If we promised Ukraine we were going to, have their back, and then we just say, too hard, too expensive. What does that say to Taiwan?
Exactly.
And what does that say to Beijing? And then, so it's not, I'm still deeply concerned about how things are going to go here. And I'm worried about civilians, and I'm worried about the suffering that's going to happen, because the suffering is going to happen. But I don't think it's going to be as easy as simply pulling up stakes and leaving and walking away. So, because Trump doesn't want that on his watch either. So we shall see. But if those two things can happen, Biden can shore up things for 2025. And if this plays out in such a way that Trump can't just go, don't like it, don't like Zelensky, screw the Ukrainians, it's all their fault, we're leaving.
Yep.
Because the Europeans are making measures to take care of that as well. And also the Ukrainians themselves are prepping for. They're building up their own military-industrial complex.
Right.
It's the thing is far from done. I hope it doesn't. I hope 2025, as Zelensky has said in the past, could be the last year of the war if we play our cards right. Because I don't want this to go into a decades-long war. Obviously, nobody does. But if we can keep up a defense against Russia's forces, and they move as slow as they have been moving, because they're not able to move faster because the Ukrainians, he's in trouble. Putin is in real trouble, and the coffers are drying up, and Gazprom is screwed, and 115 to the dollar with the ruble. I mean, it's just
1,900 men a day.
They won't.
Yeah, and they're saying, and according to Barron's and Bloomberg and all the other sites that when I was tracing this story yesterday, they're looking at 115 to 120 to the dollar by the end of the year, which is next month. That's it. There's 5 weeks left in the year, and it's going to drop another 5 cents. On the dollar. That's or 5 rubles rather. That's immense. That is enormous. Yeah. And I don't know that people grasp, because we've been relatively in the United States, for all people's complaints and the like, and all the kind of caveats everybody needs to throw in, that there's still work to do and all this kind of stuff. We have been padded in this country against what's actually happening from an economic standpoint in the rest of the world. Because as bad as things are here, and people are clamoring and all this stuff and what we talk about, they're doing it online on their phones. And in China, people are driving their cars into large groups of people. There were a couple of 100,000 people on bicycles that just all went for dumplings, and the Chinese had to shut it down because it was a silent protest. Because they were like, these people they're going to do this, and then they're going to do it again, and then they're going to do it again, and the next time they're going to be carrying revolutionary banners. So we have to put it down right now. That's what's really happening.
So Russia's having entire regions flooded because they can't maintain their civil engineering, because other civil engineers are on the front line getting blown up.
And imagine Americans, if you would. Imagine Joe Rogan's out there, if you would. Imagine maggots, if you would. If Amazon, Apple, or Microsoft, or Tesla even, how about that? I'll give you one. It was one of the singular most important stocks in the country, and it all of a sudden was trading for $1. What would be your opinion of the leadership of the country and the function of the economy under those circumstances? Think about it for a second.
I got Microsoft stock right now, and it's part and parcel of me running my operation here and it's at 400 and something right now. What if it went down to 1?
Right.
You know,
Just one of those stocks, much less the singular backbone of the entire fucking economy. If we were, again, they call it the Dutch curse or the resource curse. And Russia has it now. Russia is, first of all, economy smaller than Italy and leveraged like Venezuela.
And on a war footing.
Yes.
Which you don't just turn on and off like a tap.
Right.
And their entire economy has been switched over to one purpose and one purpose only. That's paying soldiers and building weapons.
And they've stopped paying the soldiers. They've stopped. They've lowered what you get when you're injured in battle. They've gutted it.
Yes. Yeah. And pay is still good. Their pay is still good. So they're still getting people coming in.
If you live.
But you're right. If you live. And your family gets a ham.
Right.
If you die.
Yeah.
You know? And their entire economy is built on, it's a war economy. And the criticism is that we aren't making the same transition. But we needn't. They do.
Yep.
And if things go badly for them on the battlefield, or if there's some sort of enforced, let's say, for example, I know we're winding up here, but let's say, for example, Trump goes to Putin and for once in his life, has a reasonable idea, and he uses the carrot as opposed to the stick. And he says, if you agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine, we will alleviate immediately certain sanctions that we have put on you. Even if that happens, transitioning from a war footing to a peacetime economy or to a ceasefire economy is going to take them months. And it's going to be very, very
and to what?
Hard. It's going to be hard.
Again, to what? Selling oil again? Yeah. There's already going to be a 1 million barrel a day glut next year in the oil markets. If Russia comes back online, that becomes a 3 million barrel a day glut. That means the price of oil collapses like it did under COVID. And never mind the environmental costs and the fact that people will just be like throwing money into, diesel engines hand over fist again. But ultimately, the entire oil sector is fucking wiped out. Exxon and all these other companies that Trump has been befriending and saying we're going to drill, baby, drill and all this shit. To what end? You think they're just going to gut their profit? Are you nuts? Where in the world do you think this is actually going to be something that they'll go, oh, okay, yeah, we'll totally still produce oil for negative $12 a barrel? Are you out of your fucking mind? And China, no matter how cheap the oil gets, they're not coming back online. The rest of the world has decided China is dangerous and that you cannot rely on them. And they're shifting maybe to India, some to Central Europe, and some to the United States, and largely to Mexico for cheap labor and all the stuff that they were getting from China. And then they're moving to automation. That's the way things are going forever moving forward. There is no going back. There's no situation where everybody goes, fuck it. We'll go back to getting cheap oil from Russia and cheap labor from China. That ship has sailed, and they know it. They know it. Yeah. They're, and again, what at this point, what's Russia getting but the gas and maybe the crop yields from eastern Ukraine?
Ripping out heavy metals.
And we don't even need that shit. Holy God. I just showed this company that's, you drive it's 40 minutes from Vegas. It's one of the biggest old strip mines that was out in the middle of the desert. Well, it happens to be the number 2 supplier of rare earth minerals in the world. And you know why? Because they've only been working at it for 2 years. It will be number 1 within 12 months, no matter what the fuck Trump does. Because Biden invested in this under the Infrastructure Act. They backfilled this company so they were able to expand. And now we don't need... First, we're going to move away from lithium anyways, but the Salton Sea has the largest lithium deposit on Earth, and we have access to it, and you can't even swim in that water because you'll die. So they just kind of get it out of there. And then this particular rare earth minerals place has more than Russia and China combined. And it's a single site. It's a single site.
We still have some rough road ahead of us, but
Right.
If I long term, medium long term, I think we're going to be okay.
I do too. But I think
What
part
saddens
of
me
it,
about this
yeah,
place,
yeah,
and we're talking about a global.
yes,
We're having a global discussion.
yeah,
To bring it back to my spot, and then we'll sign off.
yeah.
The only thing that makes me deeply sad is that it means that a
It's going
lot
to
more
cost.
Ukrainians are going to
Yeah,
die
it's going to
in
cost
Ukraine.
lives. Right. And again, and I got to say, this is all things being relative, ladies and gentlemen. In my audience, and I think you kind of would probably agree with this, is that part of why we're going to be doing well is because we're going to be doing normal while Russia and China absolutely fucking collapse. That by comparison, we may not be, the shining city on the hill that Reagan was talking about. Nobody is. But by comparison, you bet your ass that there's a myriad of places, not just America, that Russians and Chinese people would rather be than their own countries over the next decade. It's awful. And I'm hoping, by the way, there's a guy it's relatively adorable. I'm sure you've seen Joe Blogs. He talks about, the economics of this stuff a lot, and he does fairly good deep dives on it or whatever. And I often will look for what he's sourcing, and then I'll chase his sources to see if I draw the same conclusion and that kind of stuff. But there's a guy named Mark Biernot or whatever who's just started posting or whatever. He's an economics guy. I think he lives part-time in Europe and part-time over here. And he's really tracking this shit. Like, he's really diving into the economics of Russia and where it's going. And it was on his thing where I first discovered the kind of the potato sales in Russia starting to spike, and you could just fucking track it. And you could track it to every other situation, including 1991 and 98. Like the spike in prices and usage of purchase of potatoes goes through the roof. That's the sign that poverty is hitting like a lightning bolt in Russia. And it's just fucking, and then you stack on top of it the damage done by COVID and the war. There's no way you're putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Anyways, Philip Ittner doesn't have a new episode this week, but On the Edge, check it out.
Next week we will.
Week from Sunday.
We're getting our ducks in a row so that we have a consistently reliable Sunday broadcast.
Excellent.
And then there's some loose talk, maybe an expansion as well.
Beautiful.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
Absolutely, you too. And let me just say for the record, I'm very grateful.
If my oven works, if my oven works, then I'll have a turkey. If not, then I'll have turkey cold cuts.
Sure. Well, I would like to say for the record that I'm very thankful that we get to talk to you on the regular, that you're in our lives, Philip Ittner. We adore you and appreciate you, and we worry on your behalf, and we're very proud of the fact that we get to talk to you on the regular, and the work that you're doing, it matters. We notice, and I want you to know that.
No, thanks, buddy. It's right back at you, and right back to the entire audience as well.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can. Let's all of us try and grow.
Yep.
Everything that both Hal, myself, Boston, Brian, Tara.
Yep. That's right.
All those guys that are out there that are just by standing up and.
We got to muscle out these assholes that are getting this Russian money and do it by sheer force of will. We got to John Henry these channels up and help them. So much love, brother. Be safe, and we'll see you next time.
Right back at you.
All right.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you too. All right. There he goes. Ladies and gentlemen. And chat room, thank you guys so much. Almost got a little misty there. Saying thanks to Phil. I got to be honest. On the note of being misty, there won't be a show this afternoon. No, I won't, Sargal. I'll be unavailable later on this afternoon. But Friday, depending on when I go back, I'll be doing the next show. Will be Friday morning. We'll do the Friday morning show. I don't know if Rob Glenn is around because of Thanksgiving or not, but we will be having our Friday show. I think so, but whatever. And then depending on when we travel back to Vegas from LA, Summer and I, we're going to drive back with her son and his girlfriend. We're all having the holiday here together. That'll depend on whether I have an afternoon show or not. Just letting you know. And it's possible that I might we might go back earlier and, as soon as right after the morning show, and I would do a later show on Friday. But at the very least, morning show on Friday and radio on Saturday. So for sure. But to everyone else, I want to thank you guys. And I got to say, on my way out the door on this one, last night at the Ultimate Jam Night, there were a lot of people who came down, Rachel Lauren and Gilby Clark and Doug Pinnick and, Jimmy Keegan and Jake and Joe and everybody, like the regulars, to show their love and support for Adam as he's fighting against cancer. And it's rough. And, it's taken its toll, and he's struggling, but we keep our fingers crossed. But I got to tell you, I was overwhelmed by the beauty of these people showing up to show their love for him and their appreciation for, the opportunity he's given them and the space he holds and the work he does and just his genuine goodness, which was self-evident in the way everybody talks about him. Myself included, but it's interesting seeing other people, who scattered all over the country flew in to for this in particular. And it was very heartening. It was very beautiful. It was, it was that infusion of hope that I think some of us need on occasion to remind us that there's not only, a horizon out there that's worth walking towards, but we are surrounded at all times by more good than we notice, especially when things are rough. And when it shows up and it's visible all at once like that, I've often said that oftentimes it is my nature to be panicked by the beauty of life, that I can sometimes feel that I catch my breath on how amazing this life is with all of its challenges, even in the midst of some of the worst. So I want to pass that on to you guys, that when looking for something to be thankful for, don't fight against it. Don't let them talk you out of your happiness. Don't give away your happiness to people that don't deserve it so that you can be cynical or nihilistic or feel hopeless, because that's exactly what they want for you. Feel it in spite of them. And I got to say, chat room, I am constantly grateful to the regulars that we have here and the new people that come in, and even some of our regular trolls, because I know they come back because of Charmageddon. But I mean this. Never. Some people will try to take your happiness from you, and they may be successful at times, but never give it to them. Never give it away. Never just leave it unattended for anyone to take. It's a moral imperative. And Thanksgiving, to me, all cynical nihilist bullshit. It was we're told a lie, blah blah blah, that everybody tries to sell you on it, which is again a part and parcel to this nihilistic bullshit of enforced unhappiness. Is that if Thanksgiving has a value, it is the reclamation of the things that we truly can be grateful and happy for. And it's not just a good thing. It's necessary. It is the thing that gives life worth. And I will never in my life give away the worth and value and vibrance of my existence to people that don't even want it for their own use. Don't even want, it's not, happiness isn't something you can take from someone else and feel yourself. It's amazing. And so that's crucial. You know, that there's that phrase when someone, you know, when death comes around, that people talk about, you know, rage against the dying of the light. It's a shame that we think of that as a phrase only of those on their deathbed. Because it is not, it's not the real death that takes the light of your life. Because, you know, the good of your existence, you know, continues on no matter what. It's the little giveaways. It's where we give away the light of our life to nihilism, to fear, to worry, and our own obvious weakness. That's what we should rage against. And that one of the things that especially the maggots in Trump world want is to take people's smiles away. They really do. And, you know, whatever, you'll have to pry it from my cold, dead face. But even then, I don't think you'll be able to. So I want to say I'm grateful for you guys, and I adore you, and I miss you when I'm not doing shows. And I know that's weird, but it's become kind of a family and friends gathering. It is truly, if dare I say, social media. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. Good night, and may your God go with you.